Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for your patience while we work through some technical issues. But my name is Mike Gibb. I run accountsrecovery.net, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar on how conversational AI can help you scale your operation and grow your business. What if there was technology that could make two of the toughest parts of operating a collection agency today, staffing and compliance, easier? Enter conversational AI, which has the potential to be a game-changing force in the ARM industry. Conversational AI allows collection operations to automate more interactions with consumers and to ensure that those interactions are done compliantly. So today in this webinar, which is being sponsored by Skit.ai, we've got a panel of experts here to discuss the benefits of conversational AI and show you how it can be used to scale your business. As I mentioned, this webinar is being sponsored by Skit.ai. Skit.ai is a leading conversational voice AI platform in the ARM industry, enabling collection agencies to streamline and accelerate revenue recovery. Skit.ai's compliant, configurable, and easy to deploy conversational voice AI platform is enabling enterprises to automate nearly 1 million consumer conversations weekly. Skit.ai has been recognized by Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia 2021 and has been awarded several award recognitions, including Disruptive Technology of the Year 2022 by CCW, the Stevie Bronze Winner 2022 by the International Business Awards, the Gold Globee CEO Awards 2022, and Startup of the Year in Artificial Intelligence in 2021 by Entrepreneur India. Skit.ai is headquartered in New York City, and as you can guess, you can learn more about them by visiting them online at skit.ai.com. Skit.ai, excuse me. I just dropped a link in the chat that you can use to visit their website. Let me quickly introduce you to our panelists today. We have Amit Ombre, who's the Vice President of Customer Success and Delivery for Skit.ai, Scott Carroll, who's a collections veteran and advisor, Nick Reiner, who's the IT Manager for LJ Ross Associates. We're trying to get Ryan Matris connected. He's the Director of Business Development for Procom Services of Illinois. And we've got Mark Neeb, a collection industry veteran and the former CEO of ACA International with us. Our format for today will be a panel discussion. This, of course, means that questions from those of you watching us live are encouraged, and we'll get to them during the course of our conversation today. This is your first time on the new platform. There's a couple of different ways to submit questions. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a series of icons. That first one that looks like a chat bubble, that's the chat for today. There's a tab that says event. That's the event tab, the event chat. So everything you put in there can be seen and read by everybody who's participating today, us panelists, as well as all the other attendees. There's also a private tab. If you wish to submit private messages, you can do that. You can send me a private message. A couple icons below that is a question mark. That's the Q&A for today's event. You can submit questions there. You can even choose to do so anonymously. If you don't like any of those options, you can just shoot me an email. My email address is mike@accountsrecovery.net, and I'll have that open during the course of our conversation to see if any questions come in that way. All right. Before we launch into the conversation, there's something new I want to try the first time I'm doing this, so let's see how it goes. But for those of you that are watching today's webinar, I want you to take a second, if you can, and in the chat, if you have an objective that you'd like to accomplish or something you want to get out of today's webinar, I want you to drop it in there, so that way that can kind of help us as we go through our conversation for the next hour or so. That will help me sort of frame the question. So if you have an objective, or if you have a goal, or if you have a question or an outcome you'd like to see, put it in the chat, and we can use that to frame our discussion today. So first, let's talk about conversational voice AI and how that can help you scale your operation and grow your collections business. Scott, maybe you can kick us off.
Sure, absolutely. Well, what I've seen so far are agencies really grasping and enjoying the opportunity to work with conversational AI. AI being a buzzword, as we all know, it's been quite the buzzword for the past several months since we all heard about ChatGPT coming along. And everybody started to understand a little bit about AI, and then kind of a buzzword. So that's generated a lot of interest, and it's a really terrific opportunity for agencies to save money and to put in technology that's just updated for now. And it's really, we really haven't seen anything happen to voice in a very, very long time. Not really since the dialer did we see anything happen to voice. There other changes have come along for engagement to meet people where they are, but voice hasn't had that. And that's kind of where I would kick things off.
Yeah, absolutely. We always try to meet our customers anywhere we can, any way they want to communicate with us. We want to be available to communicate with them. We've seen a lot of success with this so far. And it's interesting. It's the way of the world going. We are a little behind on some other industries back there with AI, but it's very interesting, and it's worked better than we thought it would have when we gave them a shot, and it's been fun to work with them.
I mean, hearing that from Nick, I'm just curious how that kind of fits in with what you view the technology's opportunities and the technology's capabilities in terms of where it is now and where you see it going.
Sure. So I think as Nick and Scott mentioned, one voice AI, typically in the collections industry, one of the clients kind of mentioned it to me. I think the key is connecting with the customers as much as possible. The more connects you have, the better the chances of actually kind of getting in some collections. I think voice AI is perfect for that because it's kind of, you can say, infinitely scalable. The number of leads that you can process, the number of calls you can do, you can kind of just keep on increasing the numbers to the extent by which you can handle, right, through your agent capacity. I think in terms of capability right now, it's at a stage where some of the simple queries, some of the simple questions, typical, I'll say BAU payments is something which, the voice AI can kind of completely handle on its own. At the same time, it can handle some of the, authentication as well as verification flows and be able to kind of ensure that, the agents can focus on, converting some of the more complex kind of a leads. But it's the technology is improving by leaps and bounds. I think a lot of the people on the call would have heard of ChatGPT. I think something very similar is kind of getting enabled in the AI world, more on the voice AI side as well. And I think soon enough, we will reach a stage where it will be kind of not only more compliant than an agent, but kind of comparable to the flows which an agent is able to do as well. So definitely interesting times ahead. And I think we are just looking forward to kind of getting there as soon as possible.
Mark, you were talking before we started that you had the chance to listen to some calls, sort of that were used through conversational AI. I would love to kind of get you maybe to share sort of what you thought of that experience.
Well, it's groundbreaking in my mind. Howdy, everybody. I got to start by saying, though, that if any of you think you're kind of behind the curve on AI, last night I was listening to TV and listening to one of our federally elected officials, who I will not name, actually told us what AI stands for. She said it stands for artificial intelligence. So if any of you thought you were behind the curve here on AI, you're way ahead of the game compared to a lot of people out in Washington, D.C. But yes, Mike, I've had a chance to listen to some of the calls, and frankly, the delivery, the verbiage, the enunciation is spotless. And in fact, always sounds better than the consumer on the other end. But it was interesting as I listened to some of these calls, how it seemed to disarm the consumer. Consumer, and it says right up front, you're talking to an artificial being, and I didn't hear any consumers go off on the machine. I mean, what are they going to gain? And so it seemed like people got down to business in a hurry with the artificial voice, instead of this kind of jockeying for position on who's going to be the alpha dog on this call. There's no alpha dog. There's only one real person on the call, and there's nobody to argue with. That was an observation I made. I'm curious, though, Nick, I know you're in this every day, and Ryan, I don't think is on yet. Oh, there he is. Hey, Ryan.
I'm here.
But I'm curious what your take is on that, because it just seems like the consumers had no fight in them, even if they wanted to have.
Absolutely. We have not had a single complaint come across the supervisor's desk. Hey, why are you guys calling me this way? Hey, don't call me this way again. This is not what we need or anything. It's been very pleasant on our collector's end with the calls transitioning to them from Skit and everything like that. It's been a welcome across all the company. My end, the collectors, everything, and it seems to be working really well for our customers. Like we said, we want to meet them where they want to be met, and I think they know that it's not a person over on the other end. So there's no, hey, I can't pay this and I feel bad about it today. It's just I can't pay it. What can we do and stuff like that. And the conversations go really well. We've had Skit demo for a couple of our clients that were a little hesitant for us on going on board and stuff like that. And part of the onboarding process is that we send them some of our calls for them to review and help build. And one of the customers said, wow, it's like you guys trained this bot. It is the exact way you guys, we hear all your calls be happening, the top-down negotiation. It sounds like it is an LJ Ross employee, not a bot just out of the box.
Yeah, I would agree, Nick. It's very consistent. It doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't wake up on the wrong side of the bed, right?
Yep.
That's what we haven't had any complaints either, and it's enjoyable to listen to.
I'm glad we were able to connect the pieces of string to get you connected, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry.
No. That's and no problem. I appreciate your persistence and your perseverance, and I'm glad you were able to make it work. So thanks for joining us. One of the things that Mark was talking about that I wanted to kind of follow up on a little bit was just kind of, explaining how AI is and how sort of where collection agencies might be on the technology curve and all of that. I'm curious, do you find, obviously Nick, Ryan, and some of the others we've seen here on webinars in the past are ready and embracing this. I'm just curious for everybody else, do you think that most of the industry or all of the industry or some degree of the industry is ready for this and ready to embrace AI and everything that it has to offer?
Mike, I talk to a lot of people in the industry still, and my love is in operations. And, in the old days, when you got a new client or you needed to expand staff or replace some staff, it was easy. You just ran an ad. And back then, the metrics kind of revolved around, okay, if I need to add 20 people for this new client, how many do I really need to hire? Do I need to hire 40? Do I need to hire 60? How long is it going to take me to settle into that 20 seat increase in capacity that I have to add? And so, it was an expensive endeavor. It was frustrating because a lot of people washed out, but there was a never ending supply of people. I don't know anybody right now who has as many people working in their agency as they'd like, and they're struggling to maintain. So when an agency is trying to grow, much less, maintain a current size, I think that exacerbates their challenge. And so when I look at AI and all of the ways that we can use technology now in this industry, I tend to split work into two types of complexities. One is you've got a certain level of talent that has been there and been loyal and been around for a long time, and how do you best utilize that knowledge? Do you want them spending time with consumers on the phone, doing the 10 or 15 or 20 different responses that seem to be commonplace all day long, and what I kind of call the middle of the bell curve of all the work that has to be done? I don't think so. I think you want those people to be able to specialize now in areas that are unique to a particular situation or a particular consumer. And so that lends the bell curve to technology. And I think that's one thing that Skit is doing particularly well is, you start with, well, what are the 10 or 20 things I hear most from consumers? Let's learn how to respond to those in an automated fashion so that my special and talented and now highly priced staff who's been with me a long time can add more value than it would if they were just responding to, I think I paid that last week. So that, and I'll finish my comment by saying, I think there are agencies that are still struggling with this idea. You know, letting go. We used to always be able to control our own outcomes and hire our own staff and make sure we had all the resources we need. And now agencies need help from the outside. And I see a little bit of hesitancy in really letting go in that. But I think in the end, we're all going to get there. It's just a question of how quickly people are going to migrate to utilizing technology to take care of a lot of the mundane work that consumers bring upon us.
And just to add to it, right, I think Mark makes some great points. And just to add to it, I think, Mike, my simple comment here is, what's the harm in getting on AI? You know, obviously there are concerns around compliance, which I think, you know, after working with 30 plus agencies, you know, we have figured it. We have almost figured out, you know, almost to the 99 percentile, right? And, you know, if the concerns around compliance are away, implementation time, we have in capability. I think there's a question in the chat as well with regards to implementation time, especially on the outbound side. We can actually get the bot live within less than 24 hours, right? We already have customized workflows in place. In fact, you know, I think Nick and Ryan will be able to kind of add a bit to it as well. And there is not a lot of involvement which we need from the client's end as well. So if, you know, all those things are in place and there's not a lot of, you know, kind of support needed, or, you know, there are not a lot of concerns around compliance are addressed, you know, it's better to just latch on, you know, figure out a customized kind of an approach which will work for you in the short term, and just use it to ramp up and just improve on, you know, how the bot works for you over the long term.
To add a little bit to that, the original question about, you know, hesitancy. I mean, I was thinking about that question in terms of, are agencies hesitant? And, you know, you'd be really surprised. I was very, very surprised. I thought that there would be more hesitancy. So, you know, there are hesitant agencies, and then there are agencies that need a little convincing. Then you've got the agencies that are going, hey, you know what? I mean, early on, you know what? I'm interested in seeing and hearing what's new and exciting. And now it's a different tone. Now the tone is, I know you guys are here. I know it's out there. I want to understand what this is and how I can do it. And you know, then it's incumbent upon Skit.ai to make it an easy process, right? To make it easier to meet that hesitant consumer or agency where they, not consumer, meet that hesitant agency where they are, right? They've got concerns about putting in, you know, technology. Maybe there's concerns about compliance. There are concerns about, you know, what am I going to do with my staff? You know, so then you talk about, you know, well, now you can focus on other accounts, and you can put, you know, never forget that agencies can be extremely creative when it comes to strategies. Well, they're the same way at implementing technologies. And so it's incumbent upon Skit.ai to make it something easy to install and in terms of a process, and get that going. And it's very low lift on the agency side, in my opinion. Nick and Ryan, you can agree or not. Keep me honest. But the idea is to make it a simple. You know, you'll find that Skit.ai helps with the scripting. The idea is to match what your agent would say. And on the agency side, the lift is very low intentionally, right? It's initially building up. Maybe Nick and Ryan, you could talk a little bit about that, about your perspective of setting things up, you know, from scripting, and then also from your day-to-day support side.
Yeah. Nick, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we've all been on sales calls before we sign the contract. It's going to be so easy on your guys' end. There's not a lot of work to do. You sign the contract, and then all the work starts, and it's nothing what was promised. Honestly, this has been the easiest vendor bring on that we had. It was very quick, easy. I did it on for myself and my team, and it's just the file layout that they give you. It's very easy to produce every day. Doesn't take you a lot of time to run in our system at all. They give you the every field that's needed. You send what you have so they can verify and everything. And it was It still blows my mind how easy the onboarding process is. Thank you guys for that. It's been enjoyable. And then the support after bringing on and everything like that, been great. Me and my customer contact, Joe, almost in constant communication daily, and everything, just helping me out where I needed, answering the questions, getting our return files and everything. It's been enjoyable. And I can't say that for very many vendors.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what you just said, Nick. I mean, it was kind of mind-blowing in the sense of how easy it was, and how almost how Joe held your hand through the, all right, hey, let's walk before we run. Let's not try to, it's not all about, let's see how high we can push the volume on this. Let's make sure it really works for you. Here's what the calls are sounding like. Is this acceptable to you? Really working with you to do it. But realistically, being up in less than 48 hours. And I didn't format the whole thing myself like you did, but but it's super simple. And that's kind of like it was just kind of a sense of relief of onboarding somebody new and getting it to work for you right away. That was really exciting.
We had a question, and Amit kind of answered it about the implementation process, but there was also a question on the support staff that's needed to be able to introduce AI into your recovery process. Now, the question is sort of broadly introducing AI, so if you want to tackle it from that perspective, great. Or if you want to talk more about just sort of what's involved in introducing or using Skit.ai in your office, that would be fine too.
Yeah. So I think Nick, Ryan, if you want to start at, because you guys are using it D&D, and then I can probably add my 2 cents later.
Yeah, it's just the file. We built out what our requirements are for the accounts to be eligible to go that day. Obviously, it's a consented phone, A1 right there. And then we have verifiable information for the bot to your date of birth or last for the social to verify they have the correct customer on the line. And there's not a lot of support staff on our end needed. And everything, it's very easy. You get it going, and then we mark the accounts that are going so they don't get called the same day and everything like that. It's just a little bit of housework, but it's just the same file. It's the same layout every day, and then we get a return file of what happened on those phone calls later that evening even, and then we process that into our system so we stay compliant on that end as well.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much to add. It's exactly the same way we have it. Send a file in the morning and import the file. We have a job that does it, so there's no one person that does that. And just watching it work and looking at the reports at the end of the day, how productive it was.
And then, I forgot to add in like our scoring metric on the accounts when I first started sending it. I reached out a couple weeks into us doing it. I said, hey, I want to send this field as well. Can we incorporate that in my return file and in the outgoing file? We had it up and running in a day. Again, it's just been very easy to work with, and they just always seem to be there for us.
And I think just to probably add to what Nick and Ryan said, right? I think the only thing which you need to kind of ensure that is in place is, obviously there are going to be some transfers, because though the bot is made to kind of handle some of the conversations end to end, there will be instances where there will be dispute. There will be instances where it's more of a complex kind of a collection use case, and in those cases, I think rather than kind of repeating it with the bot, we just kind of smoothly transfer to the agent with the context. And that is something, as Nick was mentioning, right? Like the customer success manager who was working with them kind of worked initially to figure out what the right transfer rate for the agents are. And then I think within a couple of campaigns, I think we can, kind of quickly figure out what is the support needed from an agent perspective to be able to handle the transfers. And then, the only thing which limits you being able to ramp up to, probably more number of calls is effectively how much agent capacity you need to manage the transfers. That's all.
We had someone posted in the chat, and it was something I'm curious. Is the goal to replicate the same consumer experience, the same experience that a consumer would have with a collector? Is it to enhance, like if you're looking to sort of enhance or upgrade or improve the consumer experience, in what ways are you able to do that, using conversational AI?
On our end, it's just always not having what could be a 2-minute phone call turn into a 5-minute phone call when it's not being talked about the debt that's owed. And it just always refers back to the debt. That was what I prided myself on when I was a collector. Okay, I understand that's going on, but the bill's been owed. So how do we get this resolved? And it just, I had a demonstration done for a client today as well, even, and it just always go back. Okay, I understand that, but can we do this amount of payment? And it just lowers the payment. Okay, you can't do 2 months. How about 4 months? Okay, you can't do 4 months. How about 6 months? And it just keeps that call on track, like we always teach our collectors to do. And the bot does not allow that call to get off track there. And that's what I'm looking for, is just the consistent asking for the bill to be paid. If I could get every one of my collectors to do that on every single phone call, we'd have a lot more money rolling in to our offices. But we have people out here, and we understand that, and some people have to have that conversation, break the wall, break the ice with the consumer and everything like that. So it's good for both ends. But yeah, the bot just money.
Yeah, and even, money, you're totally right, Nick. It's just like, I look at it as like, it's so consistent, right? It's not, it doesn't, I go back to the whole thing of, it doesn't come in and it's having a bad day. It shows up, it's having a perfect day, like, it does every day, and it is consistent, and it follows the script from A to Z exactly how you would want it. That's the beauty of it. And if the person can't do it, or they still want to talk to somebody, you can still get to somebody. It's not the never ending, cycle of talking to, a bot if the person doesn't want to. So I like that added feature of it as well.
Do you find that using the technology gets you access to more analytics than you might otherwise have if it were a human engaged in that conversation with a consumer instead? Like, is there a difference in terms of what you're seeing in terms of the analysis that you're able to do using one type of technology versus a human?
We get a pretty good understanding of the phone calls by the vendor that we use to listen to all our phone calls. So we get a report. All of our collectors get a report card and everything. How are you doing it? Pushing for money, verifying and stuff like that. So I think it's on par. I don't believe it's better than what we were getting though.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say it's the same. I mean, it might be. I would say our RPCs are a little better. Your percentage is a little better, but it just depends on the day too. I mean, it's interesting because I track it by day. Do Mondays have a better result than Fridays? You'd be shocked. It's interesting in that aspect.
And I think broadly also talking about, I think if I talk about analytics, one is obviously the numbers part, which is effectively how does the connectivity and the RPC stand with respect to what, you have been getting with the agents. I think the second part, which is more in terms of kind of, digging deeper into the analytics, obviously we are sharing, we have certain dashboards, etc., which we are sharing with the clients. I think this is something which on a daily level gives them an estimate in terms of, what has been the general behavior, what have been the dispositions, what have been the payments and so on. And, obviously there are efforts which are going at our end to kind of work on it and figure out, if there are certain demographic, certain kind of, temporal time related kind of observations which we are seeing across clients, right? Because obviously I think the benefit is the bot is operating at scale. So you're not operating with a single agency, you're operating with multiple agencies doing a particular kind of debt. And I think, our intention is over the next few months being able to kind of roll out and even start sharing some of those broader analytics in terms of what is the right time to call, or, what is kind of the best way to use the bot in a particular scenario. So that's also something which is in works as we kind of scale up.
Okay. A question that came in from the audience, curious about medical debt and whether you find that there are more transfers to a human when you're working medical debt accounts. Does anybody have any insights on that?
Yeah. So, I think Ryan and Nicholas, both of you are predominantly medical, but I think I'll probably take that question because I've seen across multiple types. And I think it's kind of the other way, right? Where we are actually seeing much lesser transfers in terms of medical debts as compared to, probably some more specialty debts like B2B and, even utilities, right? To a certain extent. I think it all finally comes down to, I think cases where there's a lot of dispute, right? I think in medical debts, while obviously the disputes are there, I think there is also a bigger quantum, lower balances where there's probably a greater intention of the customer to kind of pay and, close out, right? We are seeing in cases where the balances are on the bigger end, there's an hesitation to right away kind of commit to a payment, and over there probably the customer might be looking for more arrangements, which with the bot becomes more of a linear approach, and with the agent there's a bit more of flexibility. So I think we are seeing in cases where obviously the amount is bigger, or in cases where the cases of disputes are higher, that's kind of resulting in more transfers. But yeah, I don't think, like, at least purely from a number basis, our transfers aren't higher in medical as compared to some of the other debts we have seen. But yeah, Nick and Ryan, I think if you guys have a view, it will be great to know.
Yeah, it's pretty steady, or not steady, but it's pretty even on both. We have not seen that much of an uptick. We were using utility early on, but we are pretty heavy medical right now, and the transfers to our agents are about the same.
Yeah, and I'm primarily medical, so I don't have the opposite side of it.
Okay. Nick, Ryan, you mentioned, like, conversational AI doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't come into work grumpy. I think one of the other things also, it does exactly what you tell it to. I think, which maybe from a compliance standpoint might provide some comfort to agency executives or agency owners who are worried about potential liabilities or lawsuits based on what a collector may say during a call with a consumer. So I'm curious about how the compliance side of that dynamic fit into the decision that you both made, or Scott or Amit or Mark, the conversation that you've had, how the compliance side of everything sort of fits into that decision to go with something like conversational AI.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off from the standpoint of, like, when we were looking at onboarding Skit, we had conversations with Scott and with their onboarding team, and the uniqueness of it's not pre-recorded. It's unique based upon what the response is off of what the consumer is saying. And when you truly listen to the accounts or listen to these calls, it's doing exactly that. And so once we kind of were able to get that through our head on a compliance level, we were comfortable with the fact of doing it, obviously, and we tested it. But we didn't really have much. I don't want to say didn't have much concern, because we have concern with anything going on, but it was easily addressed, and Scott and his team answered all of our questions very straightforward. There was never a gray area piece of that.
Same.
That's good to hear. It's so that's the name of the game, right? That's what anybody should be trying to do, is to make sure that whatever technology you are putting in place, compliance. I mean, we're at the point, we've been at the point for a number of years now. Compliance is somehow just as important as performance. And, Mark, that's got to be painful, right? Because it didn't used to be like that. There was a time, right? But it's so extremely important. And no one is trying to skirt compliance. It's all about having the technology work along the lines of compliance and not blur it. But, everybody's very clear about making sure that you've got consent. And, you can have it in your scripting to even obtain that consent, which is, I mean, I would recommend that. I had my agents do that. So, that's extremely important to keep in mind, is, no one should, putting in any technology, no one should ask you to compromise your compliance principles. And there are some agencies that are just so tight, with their mindset that, they might have to wait a while before they'll embrace. But we're talking, it's been now what, a year and a half, at least 2 years. So that is starting to really prove itself out, and as they do, I think people can see the benefit of, I won't even call it taking a chance, but a benefit of understanding the compliance around the technology and how it is compliant.
Scott, you just mentioned something that brings a question to my mind. So if anybody else out there is thinking about this, I'll, rather than type it into the comment box and have Mike repeat it, I'll just throw it out there now. I'm curious as to your perspectives on, is compliance made more challenging or less challenging when you have a bolt-on type of technology as opposed to a technology that is fully integrated, let's say, into the collection software that an agency is using? I'm wondering about compliance with Reg F and velocity and numbers of calls and that sort of thing. I'm just wondering if anybody's got comments on that.
I don't know better or worse. Like I said, we set up the standard for what accounts are able to go into the file. I review the accounts. I get a file of 65,000 accounts, and I send over about 8,000 to 10,000 accounts a day right now to Skit, and then they work it for me. A couple of compliance things. Joe has worked with me. We've changed our cadence of calls a couple times. Changed our cadence of files a couple times. So we were working with, I was sending a large file on Monday, and Skit would call those same accounts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for us, and you'd see the decrease in calls being made each day. So I'd send 15,000 calls on Monday, 12,000 and everything would be made. Then the next day it'd be down to 6,000 calls, and the next day it'd be down to 4,000, and they're just not redialing the accounts that they made contact with and the previous days and stuff like that, taking care of that for us on their end, and being vigilant on that. So it's built in both ways. I take care of it on my end, but if I make a mistake, Skit's there to back me up as well.
Yeah, I would agree. We send a brand new file every morning, just for the pure compliance piece of making sure we're not calling somebody day in and day out. Even calling that same person, within 3 days, we're not doing that based upon our business rules. But that I would echo what Nick said. I mean, Joe on their customer service side or their client service side he's been great from the standpoint of helping us kind of, work along the lines of, let's do best practice here. Let's not push the envelope, and let's work on your business, and doing it, what you can handle and in the right way. But it's been super easy from that standpoint.
Yeah, and the way things have been designed on the Skit.ai side is to follow Reg F and make sure that, and the FDCPA for that matter, and making sure that that there are no issues in terms of the times of calls and things like that. However, and this is a small however, not a big one, because it's up to the agency to make that decision. But I think it's a great thing for agencies to also track their Reg F situation, right? And it sounds like Nick and Ryan both do that, and that's good. I mean, if agencies didn't, that would be okay too. But I think it's just a heck of a lot better to have it tracked on both sides to make sure that nothing is going awry. But that if both sides are doing it, then you have just no chance of it really going wrong.
Well,
Yeah, and
that's good to hear. I was glad to have that input, because you can outsource a lot of things, but you can't outsource your compliance responsibilities, right?
No.
Right.
And also, I think the reason it's important to also do it on the agency side is because in parallel, you're also doing calls through your agents,
Mm-hmm.
right? There might be certain overlap of leads. You're also getting inbound calls at the same time, right? So effectively, you just need to ensure that, in terms of, the calls you're going through the bot, the calls which agents might be receiving on inbounds, there's no overlap, and you don't end up kind of breaching any of the Reg F kind of, regulations, right? So effectively, that's why I think, kind of an integrated approach works. And, if 100% of the calling was happening through the bot, we'd have just said, agencies, please rest easy. We will handle the whole thing, right? But effectively, it's a joint effort. And that's how the bot is best used, right? Where it works in close cooperation with the agents and augments them rather than, kind of replacing them completely, right? And, effectively, I think if they kind of work in this thing, it's always better to have, two checks and balances just to kind of ensure there are no breaches at all.
And I think, and Amit, you're exactly right. Obviously, it's a great point. And agencies know what's happening with their accounts because you're making your own dials and working your accounts, and you're providing the file of information to Skit.ai for dials. But Skit doesn't have a line of vision into what's happening on your end, and so that's extremely important. And along with that comes the notion. Skit.ai isn't just off dialing and doing things. The agency is very much in charge of their accounts and what's happening and in control of those strategies.
So, one of the things we've talked about is we definitely mentioned it early in the conversation, and it's kind of been sort of referenced a couple of times since then, is sort of the difficulties that companies have had with respect to staffing and maintaining staffing levels and hiring. And obviously, as we kind of go through this discussion and talk about conversational AI, the opportunities and implications are that it can replace or optimize, the number of staff that are needed inside an operation. And, I'm just kind of curious, can you get a sense for, what the upside is in terms of the amount of increase in volume that you can handle, because you still do need to have some, in case a call needs an agent, you still need to have some agents available. So I'm just curious if there's a formula or a rule of thumb that you can kind of go through to figure out how many more calls or interactions you can have when you're using a tool like this.
Yeah, it just based on what we signed up for with Skit, how many minutes we're using each month, how many minutes we signed on, keeping track of what we're doing there. It's interesting. We had a large ask from a current client. We needed to bring on a couple people, and I challenged my bosses. I said, I think we can get on with Skit and get this up and running quicker than we can bring in 10 people, hire 20, have 10 stay, and go on from there. Like Scott said, 24-hour turnaround till we're up and running and outbound phone calls as well. I didn't believe it when I heard it the first time, but they promised that and they delivered on that. So it was easy there. And yeah, just the hiring today is a little tougher. It is a job that it's tough. You get told no more in a day on the collection call than I would like to have ever been told when I was collecting. And it just beats you down a little bit. The bot does not get beat down. It's there. It's cheery. It can't get yelled at by Susan and then be mad at Steve on the next phone call because Steve didn't do anything. It's the same person. It's the same tone. And it just works.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, as far as like replacing, it's hard. I don't know. I don't have the secret equation of what the right number of agents is versus how many calls. What I can tell you is based on tracking my calls for my Skit is doing as many calls as 10, 11 agents in a day. So you look at it from that standpoint saying, okay, well, if I doubled my staff, here's what I could get. And at the same time that those 10 agents or those hypothetical 10 agents show up every day, they don't have, there's not the overhead expense of a actual seat and with the same production. But at the same time, not replacing agents from the standpoint of, but feeding agents actually live calls, live verifiable people, things of that nature. So it's almost becoming more and more of an inbound call center, like we talk about in the industry from that standpoint.
Very good point, Ryan.
Yeah. Curious, Ryan, based on what you were talking about, sorry, do the interactions, with Skit.ai last longer, or are they shorter than a traditional average call that a collector will have with a consumer?
From looking at it, Mike, and our experience right now, I would say they're shorter because, like Nick and I were saying, it gets to the point and stays to the point. It doesn't, well, I'm not sure, and it's straightforward. It is your all-star person that if you could train them to do exactly and everything that you ever wanted to do, it would be exactly that.
Yes, absolutely. It is shorter. A long call would be 2 minutes. And I just get in there. Well, what can this person talk about the bot for 2 minutes too? That's interesting. So let's go review, and we'll go from there and see. And just is it troubles? Is it that? So we want to look at that a little bit. But yeah, most calls are shorter than our average regular phone calls.
Yeah, and because look, people will talk about their dog, the weather, their car problems. They talk about everything. The bot stays on topic, and that's great. And Nick brought up a great point. And talk about reviewing calls. They're recorded, so Nick can go and he can see these long calls, and he can go in and he can troubleshoot. He can look from a strategic standpoint and a good customer facing standpoint. What can I do to help this consumer? Is this something on a bigger scale? Now, I don't know, Nick, I don't know if you've done that. Sounds like you had the propensity to do that. You could look at that and see, what are some things that could be done better. And then it's a phone call to Joe, your rep, and get things, fixed the way you'd like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a question that came in from the audience, so I'll use this as an opportunity to remind everybody we're getting close to running out of time. So if you have a question, now might be your best chance to get it in the chat or send it in through the Q&A on the control panel. And the question that came in was asking, are you using it on lower scored accounts, new business, etc.?
You got that,
Ryan? I don't care. I'll go if you want me
to. Follow
up. We've tried it on multiple things. So we very first started. So the quick answer is yes, but no. We've tried it on very low balance stuff that I look at it from like a time perspective of, all right, if my agents have to cure a $20 account, how long is it taking him? Versus if Skit can handle, the bot can handle this, how long does it take them? And so that was kind of an easy icebreaker for us to get into it. Then we've messed around with higher scoring, older accounts that you're basically you're probably not getting through. But I see a lot of success in your low balance stuff, but as well as the low scoring stuff too, because it's time that your agents might sit there for 2 hours and not get a hold of many people, but Skit can do this for you while they're working on the other stuff and just transfer you the people that are getting through.
Yeah. I try to mirror it as much as what a normal collector would see. What we're dialing that day is really what I send to Skit. I was having a little bit of trouble figuring out, okay, how do I judge these guys? I know what a collector does. So what I was looking for is to see where Skit would rank in my average collector on my floor. And I couldn't get a good judge of that if I was just sending them all our bronze accounts and all our low scored accounts. So we did, and we do every once in a while, but it's just a mix. What my collectors are working that day is what is going to Skit, and I want to see how it stacks up against them in the long run.
Smart.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And just to kind of add to it, right? I think if I can put forward, our recommendation is exactly as Nick said, right? I think the whole perspective of using a voice AI or Skit.ai is effectively being able to optimize and make your agents more efficient, right? Yeah. So if you kind of give them stuff which you're not giving the agents, they will definitely give you value, but you won't be able to maximize it. So I think the best strategy is to keep it a mix. Effectively whatever you are sending your agents, send it Skit.ai's way, and the bot will process it and push on the efficiency. If there are certain accounts where your agents are not touching it, you might as well send it to the bot, and there you can kind of push for either kind of passing on some efficient leads to the agents, or the bot also has an ability to kind of get the payments on the call as well, right? We have multiple payment modes which the bot can activate, where you can ensure that at least some of the calls kind of go through the end, and you at least get some output out of the accounts which you are not even touching with your agents as of now.
Curious, does the technology handle each call like in a vacuum? Like if I call and I have an interaction today, and I call a week or 2 weeks or a month from now, or I have another interaction, are each interaction sort of treated separately, each communication, each call, or does it remember things from one interaction that it has with a consumer to the next?
I think that'd be best answered by Skit. We're sending a new file every day right now. They are not. They're only handling the inbound phone calls while they have that same file. So if they reach out to the customer today, the customer calls back, they're getting the Skit agent. Tomorrow, if the customer calls back, that's rolling directly over to us.
Yeah. So yeah, I think thanks, Nick. I think over here, I think a key point here is also how integrated we are, and how updated is the system of records or the CRM, right? Because effectively, right now, the bot is a tool which kind of gets information from either the file or the system of records, and kind of uses it to build the conversation, right? So right now, for example, I think we are working, as Nick said, on output file basis. So tomorrow, if there's a context which has to be added, if there's a way to kind of add it in the output file, the bot will be able to kind of channel it and be able to kind of provide it. But at a standalone level, it's not something which we actively do at our end. uh, so I think the way to do it is either kind of we can configure it for you, or in cases we even integrate into the system of record so that we can pull it out and be able to kind of utilize it.
A question that came in from the audience: with all the discussion around AI being straightforward and all business, I'm curious if anyone has experience in using it to provide empathy with sensitive conversations, as that is something we train our agents to do today. Has this been a challenge or something that can be efficiently done with AI? Should I ask a bot to see what it says?
Well, no, but I was going to say my suggestion is ask Skit to provide you some real calls, because the bot has empathy. I mean, it really, I mean, it answers a question just as if you're caring for somebody, or just, I mean, it reacts to how that person is speaking, in my experience.
Yeah, same here.
And I think it's something which we also recognize, and we are constantly building on it. In fact, I think that's one of the initiatives which we are driving at this point, and it's right at the top of our product stack as well. And I think over there also, I think some of you might have heard about LLM, the large language model technology. That's also something which is in works at our end, where we are trying to kind of use some of the large data sets which we are getting from agent conversations and feeding that in, and obviously kind of adjusting it to kind of ensure that there's no compliance issues and there are obviously no biases which are creeping in, and then effectively kind of leveraging it to kind of develop a further more empathetic way in which the bot will handle. So definitely, I'll say we are probably 20-30% there, but the intention is over the next few months kind of be able to at least get to like 70-80% of where an agent is, right, in terms of building empathy and connection with the customer as well.
Okay. Well, we've just about run out of time, but we did start a few minutes late, so I'm going to keep everybody for a couple of minutes because we'll end this webinar the way we end them all here at accountrecovery.net, and that's asking each of our panelists for what they think the most important takeaway is from today's conversation. So if you want the audience to walk away with one thing, or if you're walking away from this conversation with one thing, what is that one thing, and what would you want to share? Amit, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think what I'd like to share is, I think voice AI, I think the concerns around compliance have been addressed. I think, kind of getting, the voice AI implemented is quite quick and easy. So my sense is, please get on as quick as possible. I think if you're ready to work with Skit, we will promise that we'll make it very, very easy for you. And then I think, there's always some time of experimentation, right, of figuring out the sweet spot which works for your portfolio. And I think the earlier you kind of get on, the easier it becomes for you and us to kind of jointly work and discover it and help you deliver the max benefit.
Excellent. Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, I would say I would almost kind of echo that in the sense of no matter how big or small you are from an agency standpoint, this is a technology that it can scare you. But my suggestion would be have a call, talk to other agencies who are on this. It is as simple as Nick and I say it was to get on, and it's been a fantastic move for us to be able to have more outreach on our book of business.
Excellent. Thank you. Nick?
The technology's not coming, it's here. You have an opportunity to jump on now. The banking industry, everything, it uses it. We're going to use it. And you have a company here providing great customer service and wanting to help you do so.
Excellent. Thank you. Mark?
Two quick things. One is look at how rapidly this technology has gotten as good as it is. And to think that it's the worst it'll ever be right now, because tomorrow will be better than it was today. It's amazing to me how many times I get off a phone call, a customer service type call, and I'll hang up my phone and I'll think, was that a real person? You know the technology is good when you start asking yourself that question. And secondly, Ryan, I'd like to thank you for your financial support of the Desert Mountain Club. I noticed your shirt. We need all the help we can get, so come on down and buy some more shirts from us.
Only if you're hosting me, Mark.
Anytime.
All right, Scott, you get the last word today.
Oh boy. Well, I talked about hesitancy before with agencies, embracing technology, but I would say if there's a hesitancy, address it. Open yourself up and take a look at technology. And the other word I really love to use, because I mean it, is partnership. Looking for a partnership in your vendor relationships with your technology is extremely important. Not just, a technology vendor you can get along with, but one that you can have a real partnership with. And I know that happens here. And so, I think if anybody's hesitant, the best thing to do is to just confront those fears. And if you're tempted or interested, at least look into it, because, you could be the next best story that comes out of this technology.
Well put. Well, panel, I want to thank each of you so much for being here today. I appreciate you taking time to share your insights, your wisdom, your experiences, and really kind of help everybody else in the industry understand just how important this technology is, what it can do, and provide some ideas and insight to help everybody else sort of catch up. So thanks to each of you for being here. I want to thank Skit.ai one last time for sponsoring today's webinar. Everybody, please check them out at Skit.ai. We're back in just under an hour. We've got another webinar coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern today on negotiating effective settlements with consumers. I know we're back to humans again, but we've got a negotiation conversation coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern. Great panel lined up. We're going to share their strategies. If you haven't signed up yet, you can find a link on the events calendar at accountrecovery.net. So we hope to see you back for that at 3 o'clock Eastern today. If not, tomorrow's webinar at 1 o'clock is the ways you can use ChatGPT to help collect more. So we're back to technology. I just keep flip-flopping between the two. But thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. We look forward to seeing everybody soon. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.